Hi, and welcome to the third episode of Diversity in Leadership, a podcast from Montresor Legal where we discuss all things relating to diversity at the senior level in the legal sector. I'm your host, Holte Loco, and I'm excited to be welcoming today's guests, who are two leading corporate lawyers with particular experience in venture capital and private equity. From the in-house world, we're joined by Peter Wozny, a legal counsel from BTomorrow Ventures, the corporate venture capital arm of BAT. Prior to moving in-house, he gained over 10 years private practice experience working as a senior associate in the corporate team at Brown Rudnick, and before that at Freshfields. Throughout his career, he has led LGBT plus initiatives, establishing Brown Rudnick's LGBT plus network and becoming the figurehead for Freshfields' LGBT plus committee while working in their Moscow office. He's also Deputy Chairman of LIFEbeat UK, a charity that works with diverse and disadvantaged young people across the UK. We're also joined by Sage Revell, who is a Senior Associate at Brown Rudnick and has done phenomenally well since joining the firm 4 years ago in their corporate practice group. Sage has spent her career working at a US firm, having spent 2.5 years as an associate at Wilkie Farr and having trained at Chadbourne Park. She's been recognized by the Legal 500 as a recommended lawyer for venture capital and has recently joined Viktrs, a smart music platform, as an advisory board member. Thank you both so much for joining us. To kick things off, I wondered if we can talk a little bit more about your backgrounds and how you first got involved in D&I. Peter, perhaps you can start us off.
Sure. So I've always been someone who gets very engaged with anything that comes up. So I always put my hand up to participate in activities and initiatives. And when I first moved to Moscow with Freshfields to join their corporate team out there, I realized how much opportunity there is to help out with the D&I initiatives in Moscow, because of the big kind of contrast you have from the UK market. So I got involved with Halo, which was their LGBT plus employee group, and then I just kind of stepped up and did talks within at the Freshfields Moscow office, and was kind of like the figurehead for LGBT and diversity. And then when I moved back to London to continue my career in Brown Rudnick, I kind of then stepped into being co-chaired Brown Rudnick's diversity network called Dawn. And then I founded the network there, Brown Rudnick and Proud, which was their LGBT network. And then we kind of hosted events and in the kind of celebrating diversity, both in the London and US offices. And then now in British American Tobacco, I'm also a board member of Be United, which is their kind of LGBT network, and I'm a champion for diversity across BTomorrow Ventures, across the new fund. So I always kind of, every time I go to a new place, I always want to kind of jump in and help out as much as I can. I feel like I've got that responsibility to help make a difference, especially in these big international kind of corporates like BAT or Freshfields, for example.
That's really interesting. And what about you, Sage? How have you kind of got involved in D&I?
Well, the short answer is through Peter. I think, as you say, I've always worked at US law firms, and so never really was at the forefront of my mind to get involved in these sorts of initiatives until I joined Brown Rudnick. And I think it was one of the first events that I went to that was a diversity event organized by Peter. And we had a great time. And so from then onwards, I was really keen to get involved. And so I think one of the things that really drew me to it was music. And so I mentioned this, even though it's not your sort of common diversity sector, but Peter and I are both musicians, and it was something that we bonded over from day one. And that's really how I got interested in being involved in these sorts of events. And so we would perform together at them, and it's always nice to have some kind of entertainment when you're inviting people over. And actually, we found that guests prefer to hear the people that they know perform than strangers, and we're quite good. So that's really how I got into it. And so I think Peter really did paved the way for what he's laid the foundations for a great platform at Brown Rudnick to continue that. And so even, to the extent that I was preparing for this podcast, I've been speaking to our EID director in the States, and I'm not sure how many law firms actually have this, but he really is great at effectively making sure that everyone is brought together and that we have events and speaking opportunities to make sure that it's really promoted. And so I think it's been continuing in a very good way at Brown Rudnick, and I'm always happy to be a part of that.
Amazing. And from personal experiences, have you faced challenges due to your diverse backgrounds, and if so, how have you overcome them? Sage, perhaps you can start us off on that.
Sure. I think, as a sort of, as my diverse background is pretty clear on paper, I'm a mixed race woman, but actually I've been very fortunate that hasn't really held me back, particularly at my more senior years of my career, and especially at Brown Rudnick. And I understand that that's probably not the experience of most people my level or who look like me. But actually, one of the things that I have felt that's sometimes held me back in my career has been that I look quite young for my level, and it's about making sure that I'm not seen as the trainee in the room. And so I've often felt like I've needed to prove something more than I perhaps should have. And actually being able to harness that and just feed everything into being the best lawyer I can be, I think it's done me a favor to be conscious of the fact that I might be a bit different, because I felt like I've been encouraged to just do better and be better. And so my experience has actually been a positive one overall, because it's made me be a better lawyer, and probably why I'm where I am today.
And do you have any tips on how, I guess, you've overcome that, especially for people that starting off their career, that they might look a little bit younger? What can they do, I guess, to gain more gravitas, particularly with people that will assume that they are younger than they actually are?
I think, it's really difficult to say, because everyone's different, but the way I manage to deal with things is to take away all the labels, forget that I am a woman, that I'm mixed race, that I look younger, that, insert diversity label there, and just to take it all back and just think to myself, I am just a lawyer like everyone else, and I've got the same opportunities as everyone, really. I mean, we've got great mentors, we're given the same opportunities. Perhaps people treat everyone slightly differently depending on their background, but as long as that doesn't matter to you, then you should be fine. And someone can only make you feel a certain way if you let them. And I think that's probably the best advice to give, that just you can't control what other people are going to think or say about you, or how they're going to judge you. As long as you feel like at the end of the day, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I did the best job I could today, and eventually that will pay off.
Absolutely. And is that a similar approach you've taken, Peter?
Yeah, I think good tips to have is to build that support network around yourself in your personal life, but then also in your working environment. So when you're in a firm, make sure you've got the partners backing to support you, and you can go to them if there's any issues. When I was in Moscow, there was a lot of homophobic kind of, I wouldn't say abuse, but kind of small kind of things being said to me, or like when I was trying to encourage kind of Pride Month, I put posters up in the kitchen, they would all be ripped down the next day because people were against it. But I had the backing of the corporate and the partners in the firm. And then the same happened in Brown Rudnick. I had a fantastic support from right from the top, from the CEO of the firm to help push you to and encourage you to be yourself.
I guess, turning it on its head, have you experienced positive discrimination, and kind of how have you felt about that?
I probably experienced positive discrimination when I was in my mid-20s. When I was working at Brown Rudnick, Brown Rudnick's involved with loads of fantastic charities, and one of them is called LIFEbeat, and they work with disadvantaged young people across the UK from all different diverse backgrounds. And I went on a few of the summer camps organised by the charity as a representative of Brown Rudnick, who was kind of financially supporting the charity. And then I was approached by the founder and CEO of the charity to join the board of trustees. But I felt I was asked to join because the board was just filled with middle-class white people over the age of 60. So I would have brought age diversity to the board and also kind of LGBT diversity. So I felt I was positively discriminated in some sort of way there, but it was all in the good way, because it kind of gave more depth to the charity's board, and then also someone younger who can then relate to the young people it serves. And then since I've been on the board now for nearly 7 years. I'm now deputy chair on the board, and we've now got people of colour on the board. We've got a much kind of diverse kind of board, which kind of fully represents the young people and the charity it serves. So it's all a positive movement going forward, which is good.
Yeah, and I guess to many people a necessary movement as well.
Yeah.
And what about you, Sage?
Yeah, so actually my experience of positive discrimination came for the first time this year. I don't think I'd quite even appreciated how it all worked until I was presented with an opportunity. And so similarly to Peter, aside from my day job at Brown Rudnick as a corporate lawyer, I was approached to join the advisory board of a very cool startup, as you mentioned in your intro, called Viktrs, which is a music video business. And I have high hopes it's going to do really, really well. And the opportunity came to me and through a friend of a contact there. And so it was a little bit far removed, but I understand that the reason why I was initially considered was because they were obviously conscious that everyone on their board at the time was a white male, and they were looking to diversify, and it was just obviously at the forefront of their mind that they should probably consider to appoint somebody slightly different. And I'm not actually the only woman on the board now. I'm one of two, so that's exciting. But I think aside from that, I didn't feel like I was given the job just because of my background. I felt like I was given an opportunity because of my background. And so I had a chat with the founder, and we got on really well, and we connected on all kinds of levels and music related, and we sort of took it from there. And so I think, that first introduction, perhaps it would have happened anyway, but perhaps not. And the fact that startups are now thinking about these sorts of things is really great. And I think it just shows how far we've evolved in society today. So I definitely wouldn't be sitting here talking to you being a senior associate at an American law firm and an advisory board member alongside very, very prominent individuals in the music industry. And then here we are. So I'll take that positive discrimination. Thank you very much.
May it continue. And I guess, Peter, with over the last however many years you've been campaigning, how have you seen D&I evolve within the legal sector?
So I've seen it become more recognised at the top, and how important it is for the employees to ensure they can be who they are in the workplace and not hide away. And that ultimately leads to much higher kind of employee performance. And then it's also more recognised by clients. They're becoming more aware of how important diversity is, and they want to see the firms echo those important human rights and treating everyone equally. When I was at Brown Rudnick, they handled kind of diversity exceptionally well, as I've already mentioned. There was so much support from all the senior partners and management there, and kind of whenever I had an initiative I wanted to put forward, it was kind of greeted with open arms, such as hosting kind of the office diversity events, which Sage and I performed at as well, and bringing in kind of exciting speakers from externally.
Yeah, and how would you, in terms of advice for anyone wanting to kind of set up or even become involved with kind of diversity committees at work, is there any advice you could give to them?
To put your hand up and go forward and do it. Diversity initiatives need doers, not people just to sit back and let people do it for them. In Brown Rudnick, in the London office, no one was running any of these initiatives. So I stepped forward and put my hand up. And it's not just good for for D&I, it's good for your own kind of firm profile, building awareness of yourself in the market, and building your own network. And it helps you your own personal development and career progression.
Yeah, and kind of largely speaking, with the bigger companies that have international offices, what do you think their responsibilities are? Because they are, a large number of them have committees, but what else can they do to improve D&I?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the big picture. So these huge international companies, they're plowing billions into the economies of countries across the world, like Russia, for example, which means they hold a lot of power. And as the saying goes, if you hold a lot of power, also comes responsibility. So they're in a position to help change those countries, those kind of slowly, it's not going to be a rapid change, but it's educating the people that it's normal to be gay, it's normal to be different, it's normal to be a female leader, and there's nothing wrong with it. And then it's also giving role models to those people in those countries who don't have them before, and opportunities for those individuals to be themselves.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned earlier, both of you mentioned earlier, the importance of mentoring. What impact have your mentors had in your career? And I think I was wondering what has been particularly good that the good advice that they've offered that you've then taken on. Sage, perhaps you can start on that.
I think from my perspective, I've always looked up to people that have been probably extremely ambitious, overachievers, and thinking to myself, how do I do that? And I think really, the best thing is just take the best parts of everyone that you look up to, because no one's perfect. None of us are, and really from what I've learned is you can effectively achieve anything that you really want to achieve. And somebody else that you can see has already achieved that, it just makes it a little bit more real. And so that's what I've taken. And I think in terms of advice for others, be yourself is probably the best one I can give. And that really does encompass everything that we're talking about, whether we're talking about diversity or just simply the type of person that you are. Because if you are, then you will get the best job that is available to you, and you don't want the wrong job. If you think it's something that you want but you're not quite qualified for, you're not quite the right fit for, you don't quite look the same, then maybe that's not the best thing. Maybe there's something better out there. And I think that at whatever level you're at, if you're looking to be elevated, being completely yourself will mean that you'll just achieve those goals even sooner. And that's effectively how I lived my life over the past few years. I did not start my career like that. I started off trying to be what I thought partners wanted to hear, and that because I was just not doing my best, because I wasn't being me. So that's, I think, the best takeaway that I've had. It doesn't work, then at least you're yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, a lot of people experience difficulty. I think there's lack of confidence to just be yourself, particularly if the senior management team isn't anything that looks or kind of behaves and they don't just behave like you do or look like you. Is there any advice that you can offer to those associates to overcome that?
Well, I always try and see my differences as strengths. So I think it's all about the mindset and how you see things. And if you don't have confidence because you think you're too small or too quiet, or you don't quite fit in, then that's okay. But you shouldn't let that affect what you want to achieve. And I think, if you can turn that around and think, okay, well, I'm smaller than everyone, but no one's going to expect me to be able to understand this, and I do, then that's also something pretty special. And then that can give you an inner confidence that other people might not necessarily be expecting from you.
Very interesting. And Peter, what about your mentors and the impact that they've had in your career, Peter? What has it been about them that's made such a positive impact in your career?
So it's very similar to Sage, but my mentors have really come from outside of law. When you're a junior associate, when you're a trainee, kind of working your way up the ranks in the law firm, you've got many kind of partners that you work closely with, which kind of mentor your kind of legal career. But for me, it was building that network of mentors outside of law to build my own personal development, building my own network. Because when you're a lawyer and you're kind of trying to establish work your way up to become partner, you need to have that kind of client network as well, and build that book of clients to support yourself. So that's how I did that through my kind of out of law mentor program that I was kind of going through. And I looked up to quite a lot of different individuals in different areas, whether it was in technology, whether it was completely like in musical theatre, for example, kind of working on my own kind of confidence building and being able to speak, and then adding all these kind of personal development traits together to help have a great career.
And have you gone through that process of building your network? Has that been strategic, or has that happened organically throughout your career?
I think it's happened organically. I'm quite lucky that when you're LGBT, everyone kind of comes in and helps one another. So you end up creating your own kind of mini bubble of like a friendship network who can kind of end up becoming a fantastic client or just a good friend, and then they can just help you in your career development.
Yeah, I guess, and then I guess there's also that sense of community as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just for your career, it's also for your well-being and kind of your mental health state as well.
Absolutely. And have you both had mentees, and have you kind of gone about kind of deciding, or has that again also kind of happened organically?
Pretty much for me, I've never had a formal sort of mentor-mentee relationship. I think, you know, as and when I work with people that I find inspiring, I'm pretty proactive in getting advice, and so I think that's really how it's been for me, and you know, getting advice from my peers as well, and that's been it. There's been no system in place that I've followed. It doesn't necessarily have to work like that, but I've always felt supported.
Amazing. Has that been also, obviously through the mentors, has that also been through the institutions that you've worked with? And if so, what have they done particularly well to encourage that development?
I think it's not so much been about necessarily just the institution I've worked with or otherwise. Out of all the institutions I've worked with, or for rather, Brown Rudnick has been the best at that, because it could be a combination of the fact that I'm more senior now, so I have a pretty good direction of exactly where I'm going and long term, but also, you know, being able to connect with people that I see that's what I want to achieve, and how do I get there. So it's been easier for me to pick out the people that would be helpful to my career. And then outside of the law, outside of work, Viktrs has been great for that for me recently, and it's been a welcomed sort of change in that, you know, you meet working professionals up on a regular basis, albeit on Zoom at the moment, and that's been really great, just to, you know, learn from other successful people, and so I'd say that's really where the balance has been for me.
It's having, I guess, that different perspective, someone from the non-legal space that kind of can give you like a fresh viewpoint. Sounds like that could be something that's quite useful to have. And Peter, you've had experiences both from private practice and in-house. What are the differences that you've seen between the two? In
terms of D&I, or just in terms of
specifically about D&I, but it would be interesting also. I think, I'm sure a lot of the viewers will find it interesting, because we are asked that quite a lot of associates wanting to move to in-house, but I guess we can start off with specifically regarding D&I.
So I think at the end of the day, D&I is D&I. So everyone's kind of striving for the same goal, but then different companies have their own strengths and weaknesses. So you need to when you move to a different company, you need to see what's missing and how you can kind of step in to help out. Moving to BTV, it was a brand new fund, a small team. They had no one leading any D&I initiatives. We have a female MD who's very passionate on D&I, but she's stretched. She hasn't got the time to put all the energy and effort into it as much as she'd like to. So I was happy to put my hand up and kind of help out as much as possible. So kind of, and then we've got BAT sitting behind us, which you've got a big corporate who's already got lots of strong policies and procedures in place, which we can kind of lean back on. But when you're a small fund with a small team, you're much more quick and nimble to be able to implement change and go into new directions. So you're like acting like the guinea pig for the big company. So at the moment in BTV, we're pushing some exciting new kind of D&I kind of initiatives. One's looking at kind of fertility treatment and support to those who've gone through IVF adoption processes, because it can be very stressful on kind of people's mental health and well-being going through IVF, whether you're a straight couple or a homosexual couple, and then just creating this kind of network to support those people, and then making it not a taboo to talk about, because most people in the workplace don't open up to their issues with the problems they've gone through IVF and all the hormones that have been kind of injected into those people, and the stresses that come through. It's seen as a taboo outside in normality, but at BTV we're trying to create a network to support all the other employees who are in that situation. Another thing that we're doing is trying to link up with diversity VC. So diversity VC is the standard, the certification process in the VC and private equity space, which encourages improvements internally within the fund, looking at your like HR recruitment, your policies, but then also looking at how you approach and build your portfolio companies. So making sure that when you're scouting for new investment opportunities, that you're applying kind of D&I metrics and KPIs. And then once you've built your portfolio, to manage all the founders that are working within the portfolio from a D&I perspective as well. So kind of offering training to the founders, doing unconscious bias training, things like that, anti-harassment kind of support for everyone. And especially that BTV, we're such a global fund, we've got the opportunity to encourage D&I initiatives across the whole globe in all these different portfolio companies where they wouldn't have that kind of opportunity beforehand. So it's a very exciting role that I've got. I'm doing all the legal work as well, but helping out with HR and D&I initiatives. I'm very blessed to have landed this position, and I've been there for just coming up to a year now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what about the recruitment? What kind of D&I initiatives have you used when building out your legal team?
So we've just implemented now blind recruitment. So the recruitment agencies that we've been working with, such as yourself, Montresor Legal, we've asked for all the CVs that get sent to us for them to be kind of blinded. So that's taking away the name, the age, sex, anything which kind of identifies the person for who they are. And then you're just looking at people's experience and qualifications. So you're getting rid of all those unconscious bias things that are sitting behind the recruitment process. And then as soon as when you bring them in for interview, then you'll see who they are and what they are. But the initial screening process, we managed to strip all that away. So then we are tapping into a much wider talent of employees, of potential candidates.
That's amazing. And I think that's so important, because a lot of our clients will want normally kind of mid-level lawyers, and they want the diversity, but diversity recruitment starts a long time before that. It starts a kind of school stage. So it's important that we're also targeting, and it's great to hear that you're targeting that stage. And then hopefully in a few years' time, we'll begin to see the real difference.
Exactly.
And just to echo that, you might find that on the flip side, the candidates that you think are the best candidates for the job are the ones without diverse backgrounds. And so I think that's also, I'm conscious that, we have such a huge drive for diversity in the workplace at the moment that I wouldn't want to forget that actually that there is a large sort of part of our work society that's been driven by straight white male public school boys, and that's not to say that they aren't the best people for the job. It's just somebody else might be, or they might not be, and so effectively making sure that we're not then negatively discriminating against a group that we're trying to effectively become a part of.
The question that I was going to ask, and I don't know whether that's going to be a bit too interesting, is are they the right person because they've had better opportunities starting from, largely starting from their childhood? And would we need, in order to kind of be more reflective, look at a candidate's potential as opposed to their current skill set?
I mean, I think that, you can't sort of decide either way until you've met the person, and it depends on the job description. And I think, as long as we give everyone from every background an opportunity to present themselves, then that's all we can do. And maybe this isn't the right thing to say, but the harsh reality is we're not all equal and we're not all from the same backgrounds. And it's about trying to give people opportunities as opposed to just giving them the job because they've been disadvantaged. It's unfair that some people have a better upbringing than others in terms of their education. And we would all strive to provide the best education for our children. But if for some reason we can't, then we just have to accept the fact that as long as there are opportunities, we'll raise them the best we can, and they'll get the job anyway because they'll have to try a bit harder, and they're really good. And so I think, I'm not one for saying you should give somebody a job just because they've had a bit more of a hard time. I think you need to give them the opportunity, and then it's up to them if they want to fight for it.
Yeah, and Peter, do you agree as well?
I do to a certain extent, but I also think you need to encourage you need to have a little bit of positive discrimination there as well involved, because especially for Black and ethnic minorities, some of them don't have the opportunities to build those early career developments from an early age due to the discrimination against them. Look at everything that's standing up for Black Lives Matter at the moment. So for some companies to have these kind of fellowship opportunities, scholarship opportunities to help like on social mobility and people to get into the workplace with opportunities that they wouldn't have elsewhere, I think that's also important to have. So to encourage both things, both bringing in fantastic, exceptional talent, but also helping nurture and grow talent from below that, offering opportunities to those who wouldn't have that before. And Brown Rudnick's got a fellowship program where they do that process, and then we've also implemented that at BTV.
The Urban Scholars Program. You need a combination of both for sure. And I think, it's easy for me to play devil's advocate being a mixed race woman and not having necessarily the easiest start to my career. So I can say it now with a clear conscience. And I'm sure if I was sitting here, having gone to Eton and Oxford and being a straight white guy, it wouldn't come out very well. But I can probably speak to that from the other side of things, and that, it was harder than it should have been. But that's okay. And sometimes things are difficult, and it's not because we're from a diverse background. And so, I think it's good to have the balance of, my perspective and Peter's together is probably the right thing combined.
And I guess going back to, when you were starting out in your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Starting out right from the beginning, trying to get into the law, that was really tough. And I was a straight A student, and I found it really difficult to get a job for whatever reason. Maybe it was because I didn't look like everyone else, or because I looked younger and had less of an opportunity. But just never give up, because if you really want something and you work really, really hard, it should work out in the end. And just to accept that it just might take you a bit longer. And I see where I started out compared to my peers, and how everyone was getting training contracts and doing really well, and everything was going so well for them, and for me it really wasn't. And then I looked to where everyone is now, and I think I can safely say that I'm probably doing the best or one of the best. And I think it is because I've had to push so much harder. So don't be disheartened if you're at the stage where things aren't working out, because that drive and that determination, that will serve you well, and you don't lose that. And I think it's been the same for Peter, that if things have been not quite as easy and you don't just land yourself with the first job that you want, eventually you get to where you want to get to. And when you do have that opportunity, you don't mess it up because it's so much more precious to you.
And throughout the process, I guess you're building that grit, and wherever life takes you, that resilience and grit are such essential skills. And what about you, Peter? What to close it off, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say follow your gut instinct, work hard, learn from your mistakes, and then enjoy life, because you only live once, and that everything will work out fine. But I think when I came out of uni, I didn't have a training contract, and it'd just been the financial crisis. It was 2008, and I was struggling to get that training contract, and quite a lot of my peers had done that. So I ended up biting the bullet, paying for my LPC out of my own pocket, hoping that I'd get a training contract that would come out of it. By the end of that, I then ended up landing myself the role at Freshfields as a paralegal, and then I took the opportunity to go abroad and work in Moscow and replace the trainees that were sent out there on a regular basis. And that was a fantastic opportunity, and that really kind of built my own the foundations of my legal career, which then got the attention of Brown Rudnick, a fantastic US law firm, to move back to London and then continue my career. And then so it's grabbing these opportunities as and when they come up, and embracing them, and then just working hard and taking as much as you can from those opportunities, and then you'll succeed and you'll do really well in your career.
Amazing. Well, on that very encouraging note, thank you both so much for joining us. It's been really interesting to hear more about your careers, and I'm sure there were a lot of good tips out there, which I'm sure will be useful to lawyers, both at the junior, mid and senior level. So thank you both again for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, then please click subscribe, like and share on LinkedIn. And I'll see you on our next episode. Thanks so much. Bye.